Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari. This is Great Big History Podcast. In this episode, we are going to do a quick analysis of the Reformation from 1517 to 1648. Now, this is a 102 class, and we know that the Reformation can be an entire semester unto itself. So we have to kind of condense it down into part of one class. So how do we do that? We do it by talking about kind of like, what is it about? Instead of event, what is it philosophically about? And what is philosophically about is who controls knowledge. That's the question. Is it going to be the church or the individual? Now, the church was the traditional keepers of knowledge. It understood the Bible. It was well educated in the Bible. It understood it was the keeper of classical knowledge, the Greeks and the Romans. And it was the keeper of the theocentric universe, the idea that God made the universe. We are all actors on God's stage. We are all merely players. All the world is a stage, and we are merely players. As Shakespeare says, well, who made the stage? Who wrote the play? God did. That's tradition. That's the way it's been since the end of the Roman Empire. Is it going to continue to be that? Or is it this new thing? The individual controls knowledge. This is new. And it's sexy, but it's also scary. Because if the church had claim to the Bible and classical knowledge, what did the new individual claim to control? What knowledge did it have? That's going to be one of the great questions. And if it's not a theocentric universe, what the individual is going to claim, what the Reformation is going to claim, is it's a humanism. It's a human-centric one. We make our own lives. Is God important? Yes. But we make our own lives. We choose our own paths. The human, you, the individual, is the most important person in the universe. Not more important than God, but you're the most important person in your life, in the universe. So we get Martin Luther. In 1517, he writes the 95 Theses. He's got 95 problems, and the church is one. He wants to reform the church. He doesn't want to break the church up. He doesn't want to make Lutherans, much less Protestants. He just wants the church to kind of reform. And he's got 95 problems. Now, he probably would have been more successful if he went with 3 or 4. He went with 95, and you can understand why. It just is like, it's just complaining. It's like a Twitter thread or a comment section. And it's not important to the church. In 1517, the church don't care. Luther is a minor monk. And the nailing of the 95 Theses to the church of the Wittenberg, the door of the Wittenberg church is so like manly and emotional, and it's like the pinnacle of so many books, and even Lisa Simpson inventing Protestants, when she became God. And yet no one cared. It doesn't work like that. Luther probably nailed the thing to the door and said, "Ha, I've done this." And then nothing happened, and he like, "All right, I'll walk away." And then somebody probably opened up the door and looked outside and looked inside and went, what's this graffiti on my, what is this? Probably took it down and like showed it to the abbot and like, all right, whatever, dude. Complainers. What are you going to do? Haters gotta hate, man. But the major thing that Luther's going to argue is that people need to be able to read the Bible. See, here's the thing about the Bible. The Bible's originally written in Greek. Yes, the Old Testament's originally written in various different forms of Hebrew, but yes, the Bible as it's put together for Christians is Greek. St. Jerome will convert it to the Vulgate, to Latin, and then it stayed in this Greek and Latin form. The Orthodox will keep the Greek form, the Catholic Church will keep the Latin form, And then it doesn't change. Now, it does change, and people think that this is one of those problems where people go, this is the literal word of God, and it's not, because every time it's copied, people make mistakes, people change little things. But the idea was, you don't translate the Bible out of Latin. One, Latin was the language of the Romans. So it's a better language. It's a more exact language than English. I mean, come on, English is changing all the times. And if you, every time you translate, and I've done this, you have a problem between the literal translation of the word and the emotional or intended version of that word. And so wills change to shalls. And as people rewrite the Bible, as they're making copies, they're making little changes. They're leaving their commas become periods. They make a mistake. John becomes Peter saying something. And what happens then, that mistake gets copied over and over. And then more copies get. So the Bible is, because there's no standardization, because humans make errors, there are all kinds of little changes from the 300s AD to now, till at least printing. Because in printing you could be more exact, but till basically now. And you when you read different translations, you see different versions. Because the translations changed the words. And so the idea of the Catholic Church was, we'll learn Latin, we'll read the Bible in Latin, and don't worry, people, we'll explain it to you. That's the homily. We will explain what the Bible says, because the Bible is complicated, and it's contradictory, and it says things, and then it rejects those things, and then it says them again, and there's a lot like that doesn't make sense in the Bible. We'll help you understand it. That's our job as priests. Martin Luther, who is a smart guy, is like, F that, man. I don't need some priest telling me. I'm a monk. I get it. I'm reading it. I'm okay. And so he's like, people could be like me. Why should they have to listen to some priest, of which many, because priest was a good job in the Middle Ages, many aren't educated. Many are making stuff up on the fly. They don't really know. They are not. Martin Luther is highly educated, but the country priest, the little county priest at some local small town, man, he just got the job so he could get a job that paid well. That's it. You know, he was either from a poor family, and this was a step up, or he was from a good family, a rich family, and he was like the third son. So he wasn't going to inherit much anyway. So it was a place to put people. But if he's the third son, he don't care. This is not what he wants to be. And if he's the poor kid moving up, he doesn't have the education. He's not going to Cambridge and Oxford to learn this stuff. And so Martin Luther says people need to read the Bible. Well, if you're going to read the Bible, you need to have an education. You need to be literate, first of all. But you should also have some kind of classical knowledge. You should know what they're talking about. Because the Bible makes all kinds of allusions to events, to characters, you know. And so you should know about these things. You should have some history. You need theology. You need to know who God is. So you need to have an education. But his biggest argument is people can, with an education, and they can read the Bible, people can find their own way to God. They don't need priests. You can figure it out. Here's the handbook. How do you get to heaven? Here's the book. Read the book, figure it out. It's not that hard. And so he's very pro-person. He's very pro-you. He's humanist, is what we're going to say. He believes people can figure it out. So he's humanism. He's not the inventor of humanism. He's maybe not even the greatest writer of humanism. That's probably Erasmus, Erasmus. But this whole philosophy of what will become Protestantism is founded on the idea that man, you, a person, also a woman, that humans are the most important actor in their lives. And that they should have freedom from authority. So in a way, this is the birth of the modern libertarian concept. We'll see this pop up when we hit philosophy and in the Enlightenment. But it's the idea that you should make your own choice. You can figure it out. Like before this, we are very Platonic and Neoplatonic. People are idiots. They can't figure it out because they're peasants. They're farmers. It's not their job to understand the high concepts of late Latin in the Vulgate. Like, that's not their job. They have way too many things to worry about. So they go on Sunday, the priest tells them they reads them a story, tells them what it means, says, be good people. The people say, okay. They throw some money into the offering, and boom, done. And everyone goes about their lives. There are problems with this. Obviously, there are going to be huge problems because it's the Reformation. Well, if you say you don't need priests, you don't need authority, you could figure things out on yourself. If you attack one part of the hierarchy, i.e. the church, you're attacking all parts of the hierarchy because, you see, the church is allied with the king. And if you don't need the church, why do you need the king? Why do you need the Lord telling you what to do, paying taxes and stuff and such? You could figure out the good life on your own. And so what you get is instability. You get civil wars in France, Germany, and England. You get the Inquisition in Spain and Italy, where heresy becomes a crime. And we'll talk about heresy when we do the Counter-Reformation. But heresy is a thought crime. You get Catholic countries versus you get Catholic kings versus Protestant kings, and the wars of religion. It's going to leave. The 130 years of the Reformation is going to leave 30 plus million people dead. These are the biggest wars since the Roman age in Europe. They are going to tear Europe apart. The other problem is people are stupid. They make stupid choices. And you know this. You may go, hey, I'm smart and I'm great. But the people around you, think about on your drive from home to school, from home to the grocery store, how many people are bad drivers, are dumb drivers? How many people in your life have made bad choices? How many people have broken up with you? Right? Every one of them that broke up with you made a bad life choice because you're awesome. So people are dumb and make stupid choices. Winston Churchill said this: the best argument against democracy is 5 minutes, a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. George Carlin, think about how stupid the average person is and then realize that half of them are stupider than that. Because average is, average. Half will be below and half will be above. So think about how stupid the average person is. This is Plato's complaint. This is an argument against democracy, against people that goes all the way back to Plato, that people make bad life choices. And Luther was wrong here because he knew people were dumb, but he also thought they would think like him. He thought he was right. And if you just guided people along the way, they would read the Bible the same way he read it. Well, guess what? That immediately failed. Protestantism immediately broke apart. People who did not want to be told what to do by the church did not want to be told what to do by Luther. And so immediately fringe groups break apart, and authority lost all control over the message. And you get all kinds of crazy people. You get the Anabaptists that are like, there is no sin. There is no marriage. You have no property. You could do whatever you want. You get the Mormons. Now, they're not in the 1500s or in the 1800s, but the Mormons' idea is Jesus came to America. And started an American religion and put golden tablets into the earth. You get the Amish and the Quakers. The Quakers literally shook, quaking. You get the Levelers. You get all of these people who, if you're a person in authority, they're nuts. They're completely crazy. If you're Luther, you've got some beefs with the Catholic Church, but you respect the Catholic Church. It had 1,500 years of like being Catholic. And you're like, all right, I can have an intellectual argument with a Catholic priest, minister, and I could tell them why they're wrong and they're stuck in the past. But at least I understand where they're coming from. And then he looks to his left, and these people are like doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so authority lost all control. And you understand authority. It doesn't like losing control. And so you immediately get, Church of England versus the Puritans. Like the Puritans got kicked out of England. They're both Protestants. Church of England is Protestant against the Catholic Church, but the Puritans were Protestant against Church of England, against Anglicans. They got kicked out. They had to end up in America, where they became even crazier in their religion. Remember, the Puritans do not come to America for freedom of religion. They come to enforce their own religion on their own people. And the people in America who did not agree with them, even other Puritans, got kicked out. That's how you get Connecticut. That's how you get Rhode Island. They're made by people who the Puritans kicked out, who the Pilgrims kicked out of their own church, because they had even crazier ideas, or less crazy ideas. It depends on who you're talking about. The Counter-Reformation, though, the church strikes back. The church is 1,500 years old. It ain't going to take this. It strikes back, just like the empire. Gonna take this. Some monk in Germany starts breaking up it's one Christian Roman Catholic church. Stop. So the first thing we get is the Inquisition. Because before we can attack Protestant kings in Protestant countries, we got to make sure that we don't have terrorists, Protestant terrorists in Catholic countries with Catholic kings. We don't have traitors. And so the Inquisition is a way of trying to force people to find, Protestants in Catholic countries. And what it does is it makes belief a political crime. For the first time, what you believed was a political crime. Now, actually, it's the first time since the Council of Nicaea in the 300s, when there were all kinds of competing early Christian ideas, and Constantine said, either you figure it out or I'm going to figure it out. Either you make the rules or I make the rules. And the church said, okay, we'll have the Council of Nicaea. They figured it out. They say this is what it is to be a Christian, and everyone who doesn't believe this is wrong. And this is where the Nicene Creed comes from. It's a statement of belief. This is what we believe as Christians. And so if you didn't fit there, you were a heretic, which made belief for the first time, as far as I know, anywhere, into a crime. But since that happened, and you more or less wiped out most heretical groups, now they will exist from time to time in the Catholic world, but the Inquisition will bring that back with abandon. It's going to have torture. It's going to have spying. It's going to have terror and state murder. Because how do you find these terrorists? The same way you find terrorists in modern society. You have either spies going to places that these people might meet, or you have people who turn them in. Now, the problem with that is you have a lot of people who have beefs with each other who turn in their neighbors. Hey, I wanted to buy my neighbor Joe's land, and he told me to F off. And then I get a knock on the door. And it's the Inquisition. It's a bunch of Jesuit priests with a couple of guards, a couple of military guys, a couple cops. And they go like, mister, do you happen to know anyone who is a Protestant and doesn't believe in the Catholic Church and is working to overthrow the king? And you say, is there a reward for that? Oh, yes. Well, the people who we find probably have property or money, and you'd be, as a thank you, allowed to have a piece of that. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, really? Ha ha. Well, my neighbor Joe, he's doing all kinds of stuff. He's reading the Bible. Now, I don't know what that means, but he bought one. It's in Spanish or Italian. It's not in Latin. And on every evening, he's sitting on his porch reading that thing. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I know us good Catholics don't read the Bible, and the Bible we don't read is definitely in Latin. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, sir, and that will be very helpful. So, we'll be in touch about if we find him guilty or not, and what happens to that 20 acres of land he owns. Thank you. And so what will they do? They'll go over, they'll arrest Joe, and then they'll torture him with the simple question. Dude, we know you're a Protestant. He's like, no, I'm not a Protestant. Well, that's what a Protestant would say, right? That's what a liar would say. That's what a terrorist would say. Of course you deny it. Now, look, we know you've been turned in. We know you're a terrorist. We know you're a Protestant. And look, we're going to start cutting off your fingers until you give us 10 names. Just give us 10 names. We know you can't be doing this alone. Protestants are weird. They're not that weird. They have to hang out with other Protestants. Terrorists hang out with terrorists. We know this. You're not doing this on your own. So just give us 10 names. But I don't know anybody. Well, then we're just going to have to start with the pinky now, aren't we? Pinky gone! Ah! Well, we're going to take the thumb next. Because I watched Reservoir Dogs. I know how this works. We're going to take the thumb, and you're going to tell us everything we want to know. Because if you don't, we're going to take the other thumb, and... Dude, that's your own fault. Okay. Anna and Jim and Tony and my neighbor. Oh no, come on, man. We're taking the index finger now. I know you're lying about that one. But see, this is what happens. He'll give them 10 names. In the end, torture is never about getting information. It's about confirming your beliefs already, because you can never confirm the information. And so what starts as one person, now you get 10 names. So now you got 10 people. Now you torture each of them, and each of them give you 10 names. Now you got 100 people. And all of a sudden you've got a conspiracy. Oh my God, there's 100 people. And then you torture them, and they each give 10 names. And now you've got 1,000 people. Now you've got an army of terrorists about to overthrow the king. And so the conspiracy gets as big as you want it to be. So terror never works. Torture never works. It will never tell you new information. It can only confirm the information you think you already have, because you can never know if it's true. So if you think there's terrorists, it will confirm that there are terrorists, because the person will figure out sooner or later. In fact, you'll tell them, just confirm what I already know. I already know this. I already know that you're a Protestant. Just admit it, and I won't have to torture you anymore, because what I really want to know is the people you're working for. You're an idiot. You're not the top. It's not your fault. So who is in charge? And you see how this works? You just get names. And you can never confirm, because you get the new people. they're going to say they're not terrorists because that's what a terrorist would say. And so you torture them until they admit they're terrorists. And then you say, great, see, I knew. Now we're talking sense. Give me 10 names. Let me find more terrorists. So if you are convinced there are terrorists, you will find terrorists. All right. The Inquisition is famous, but it's fairly small. You can't torture your way back to Catholicism. And people you can't scare your way to force people to give up Protestantism. What people realize, and what the more liberal parts of the Catholic Church say, who look at the Inquisition and are aghast at it. Remember, like we talked about slavery, not everybody is in support of this. There are true believers who love torturing people. There's a whole lot of people like, you're torturing people. This isn't going to work. They rely on culture, art, and music. Very simple. They go, we're the Catholic Forkin Church. We have giant churches. Let's paint them with murals. We've got music. We've got the best sculptors in the world on our payroll. Let's let them loose. We've got the best composers in the world on our payroll. Let them loose. The Reformation, on the other hand, is a rejection of all of this. Yeah, I know Church of England will not be, but the others are like, no, man. We're focused on the Bible. We got our nose in the book, finding our way to heaven. So what the Catholic Church does is double down. We've got pizzazz. We've got money. We've got Chinese silk robes. We've got Michael effing Angelo. Grandeur in art. We got St. Peter's Basilica, the largest church in the world. We are going to cover every Italian church with as much art as possible. We're going to do architecture. We are going to make people look at the basement of a Protestant reading room and go, dude, I'm going to be Catholic because that's effing cool. And sure, Protestantism might appeal to the nerdy people who want to read and all that, but most people can't read. 80% of people probably can't read in 1500, maybe more. So what appeal does reading the Bible have for them? For most peasants, it's not a question. So why do most people end up becoming Protestant in Northern Europe? Because the king or the duke became Protestant and told them, you're a Protestant now. And he went, okay, all right. What does that mean? People don't know what it means. But a lot of people will stay Catholic because it's awesome. It looks awesome. And if you have not walked into St. Peter's Basilica or the Sistine Chapel and be impressed, like, I don't know who you are. If you are not walking into the Jesu with its Aztec gold on the walls, and you're not like, holy shnikes, this is awesome. Like, you got no soul. I don't know what to tell you, but if you're not impressed by that, you will not be impressed by anything. This podcast can impress you. Because the entire point of the art, of the music, of the culture, of the visual nature of the Counter-Reformation is to blow your freaking mind. Now, the church isn't dumb. And while it's trying to convert people back, it's trying to find those Protestant terrorists on one hand, and it's trying to convert people back on the other, it's got its eyes on the prize. And it knows, whether it wants to admit it or not, Luther had a point. Luther was right. Not about everything. Not about all 95 of his things, because he's a complainer. But on some of the things, he's got a point. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been popular. And so, the church has the Council of Trent in the 1550s. Now, notice this is like 40 years later, 35 years later. The Catholic Church can never be accused of doing anything quickly. But the idea is very simple. The Council of Trent is the first time in a very long time the church got together and said, maybe we should change. Maybe we should adapt. And the idea is the church can change. It can modernize itself. It could change its hymns. It could change its relationship to the people. It can change. That's going to be Vatican II in the 1960s, which was so radical. Like, there's a divide between people who accept Vatican II and people who don't. I have grandparents or had grandparents, they're all departed, who were like on both sides of the divide. One went to a church that still did the Mass in Latin. The other was like, no, I'm entering the modern church. It's going to change. And so the idea is that the church can change. Now, that's a radical idea because the church had been more or less the same since the Council of Nicaea. Yeah, it changes here and there, but on the whole, the church is more or less the same for 1,000 years. It doesn't change. It doesn't fly by night. It doesn't appeal. It's bigger than people and their wants. It doesn't pull what's popular. The church doesn't care. It is a giant, immovable institution. The Council of Trent says it can change. It can modernize. It can be liberal. And that's radical. That is a radical admission. Why? Why does it do it? Because in the end, the Catholic Church realizes it has to compete in the land of ideas. People have to want. Before it was a monopoly, everybody was Catholic in Western Europe. Now they have a choice. You don't want to be Catholic? You don't like your Catholic Church? You could be Lutheran. You don't want to be Lutheran? You be Calvinist. You're not Calvinist? You could be Anabaptist. You could find the church you want. Now, as a Catholic, I find this weird. But I have Protestant friends who change churches. They're like, we're looking for a new church. And I'm like, what do you mean you're looking for a new church? They're like, well, we're trying to find one that works more with our family. Our family has changed. And, we're trying to find one that more identifies with us. And for Protestants, that's normal. You buy and you compete, and it's very capitalist. And you find the minister and the church and the doctrine you like. As a Catholic, I'm like, it's Catholicism. It just is. One Catholic church is as good as another. And if I don't like the priest, all right, I'll go find a priest at another church. But the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church. Mass is Mass, man. But in the 1550s, the Council of Trent is admitting the Catholic Church has to compete now. And that it can compete. It has a well of power. It can compete with these new, sexier, more innovative Protestant ideas. And so what's interesting is how the Catholic Church kind of remains the center. And you get Protestant groups that are more conservative than the Catholic Church. You see this in America. Like, there are Protestant groups that are way more conservative than the Catholic Church today. And there are Protestant groups that are way more liberal. And you get ones that are kind of like the Anglicans, Church of England, even the Lutherans that are kind of Catholic. Like, they hang out together in the center. Right? And then you get further and further to the left and to the right, further afield. So it's kind of interesting how the Catholic Church remained the standard that one compared itself to. You were either more liberal than or more conservative than the Catholic Church. So, in our next episode, we're going to talk about science. Because remember, 30 million people are going to be killed. And a lot of people were freaked out about why they were being murdered. Because the ultimate part of being murdered was, my version of God, my understanding of God is better than your understanding of God. And there's going to be a lot of people who say, prove it. How do you prove that? How do you know my version of God is better than your version of God? that you can prove to the point that's worth murdering somebody over. So that's what we're doing next.